Hello, everyone. Welcome to Youth Bombs. I'm Coleman.
I'm David.
I'm Craig.
And today we are going to talking about international affairs, peacemaking, and the media. So what could I possibly be referring to? I'm referring to the media escapade or whatever the catastrophe was of like the negotiations between Zelensky, President Trump, and Vice President Vance. What the heck happened, guys?
Yeah, I mean, that was crazy because Zelensky came all the way to America, and President Trump and the administration were under the impression, given everything Zelensky said in public and to the media and to everyone else, that he was going to sign the mineral deal. And this mineral deal essentially was that the United States would have a revenue share of rare earth minerals from East Ukraine, the Donbass region, in exchange for the $175 billion that the United States have already given Ukraine in aid. So then Zelensky shows up and he says, no, I'm not going to sign the deal. And Vance also felt antagonized by the way Zelensky was acting. He never says thank you, as Vance said. He was dressed very poorly, as usual, like a slob. So that did not go well for Zelensky. And a lot of people in Ukraine are saying that he overplayed his hand in reference to Zelensky. David, what do you think coming out of this?
Well, it resulted in I wouldn't say a shouting match, but it came pretty close to a shouting match, and it resulted in there's probably been a lot of meetings like this behind the scenes, but it's one of the first times that we've had a meeting like this about war that's very like that has a lot of tension in it, like live and for everybody to see. So I do like the transparency, and I do appreciate President Trump keeping the reporters in the room when he could have easily just told them to get out so that they could have had this conversation privately.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it was good to like actually see that in reality, to know like what's really going on, not just like, oh, everything's going to be behind the scenes where, you know, the people don't deserve to know, no transparency. Like sometimes you need to bring things out into the open, and Zelensky deserved to be called out.
Yeah, so like the one thing I'm a bit confused about is so what was not being like the thing that was supposed to be signed that day was not a peace agreement per se, but it was like an acknowledgement of like U.S. Possession of resources in Ukraine. Is that
slash revenue from rare earth minerals in East Ukraine, because they have very valuable materials underground, and we've given them so much in aid, 175 billion congressionally appropriated, that we are owed much.
Yeah, and a lot of that was given by the Biden-Harris administration. And Zelensky, Vance did bring it up like that Zelensky was campaigning for them in Pennsylvania, and I was looking into that, and it's not as clear. Like it was like just like a political group, but it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was clear campaigning for Kamala, but he's definitely sided with Kamala, like and Biden, and been very pro Kamala and Biden during the election, and he's been like doing photo ops and stuff like that. So it just seems like Zelensky didn't play his cards right, because everything would have been fine if Biden and Kamala would have won, and then Zelensky would keep on running his money laundering scheme and getting. Well, I heard it was 250 billion, but 175 billion, 250 billion is still a lot of money. And Zelensky would have kept on getting all this money with basically nothing in return. Like Trump's trying to get something back with the minerals, but what were we getting back?
Nothing, just death and destruction. And Zelensky does not care about the lives of his people.
Apparently, in Ukraine, they have manpower issues. They're forcing people to fight in their war. They're literally grabbing people from the streets and forcing them to fight for the side of Ukraine. And
I didn't know.
One of them, there's like a recent news report that came out. One of the people that got grabbed was someone with Down syndrome, and he was being forced to fight for them, and he was mistreated by his fellow comrades, and he almost blew up his battalion by accident because they were making him like stuff this grenade, and he did it wrong, and it almost blew up his battalion, but luckily it didn't, and he just got bullied more by his comrades. There was even talk of his comrades like talking about using him as cannon fodder. So because he had Down syndrome, he has trouble like taking care of himself. So they wanted to put him, and they actually are putting him right now in the front lines.
That's wild.
Yeah. So they're just basically using him just to die. Complete, like as someone who really stands up for the sanctity that is life. And I do believe that life is definitely something that should be protected. That's absolutely awful. And I can't believe they're doing that to that person. I think it's wrong in general to force people to go to war and take people off the streets to go to war, which is something that Zelensky has been doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Coleman, do you feel that perhaps Zelensky's tune may change with the pressure that President Trump has put on him in terms of looking for peace and a solution to the end of the war rather than continued unnecessary bloodshed?
So I guess to really answer that question, I need to understand, like, how does, I guess, the U.S. sort of acknowledging or trying to sign an agreement in which they can gain benefits from the mineral reserves in Ukraine, advancing the steps of peace? Is it just like saying, hey, if the U.S. has skin in the game, then the U.S. therefore would be incentivized to continue going forward and like bringing about the peace negotiations? Is that the logic here?
Right, that the U.S. would be able to take a role in shaping them, that it would be more friendly towards Zelensky because we would getting something in return for the $175 billion that we've given Ukraine versus just getting nothing, and Zelensky continuing to demand basically every country in the world for more resources, more money, more aid, etc., when he's just throwing bodies at Russia and sending innocents to die and harming his country.
But Zelensky, he was offered a ceasefire from Putin, but he didn't want it because apparently he brought up where I believe it was 2022 when Putin broke previous ceasefire negotiations. So Zelensky wants security. So he wants not just a ceasefire, but he wants to make sure that Russia will never attack Ukraine again. And yeah, he's hoping to get that, but Trump and Vance are basically telling him that you can get that security by doing it with us, because the people before, like Biden and Obama, who were trying to take care of this, they weren't really respected by Putin, but Putin does respect Trump, and I believe ever since Trump took office, Putin hasn't really been making moves, right, against Ukraine?
Right, it's been very slow going. I mean, yes, the war is ongoing. Of course, there's continued developments, but there have not been any massive major sieges like the beginning of the war, for instance. But in terms of the war itself and just looking at the destruction, it's so sad to see. And it's really clear that Zelensky is just a warmonger, a dictator. He refuses to hold elections in his country. He will not do it because he knows he'd lose. He's unpopular. He's not committed to democracy whatsoever, but the West champions him as this paragon of virtue and honesty. He's the exact opposite. This is the guy who bombs civilians, who partners with the neo-Nazi Azov battalion. This guy is a thug. He is a menace, and he has no place whatsoever receiving aid from the United States or any other Western ally, period.
But people try to paint Putin as the devil because of what he's doing to Ukraine. But if you look at Russia's history, Russia is an expansionist state. So it needs to expand in order to feel safer. The reason why the U.S. isn't like that is because we're not really surrounded by a lot of immediate threats. Like Canada and Mexico, they're not immediate threats that are out to get us and that are going to destroy us at any time. But Putin has Europe just right up his corner, and so the way Russia has operated for its very long history, hundreds and hundreds, I don't even know how many years, but a long time. It's Russia's pretty old. Is that they expand so that their enemies will have to go through more in order to get to the capital, or in order to. Yeah, and that's how they operate. But when the Soviet Union fell, and all of a sudden all these countries popped up, like Uzbekistan, Ukraine, Belarus, and all these countries that were supposed to be sort of make Russia safer from the powers in Europe, which are very much anti-Russia, then Russia began to feel threatened, especially because Ukraine was making moves to join NATO. And Putin alleges, but I don't really trust Putin, so I wouldn't really take it that seriously. But he does allege that Ukraine was building missile sites before Putin attacked Ukraine.
Yeah.
I would disagree with the notion that it's justified in terms of Russia being expansionist. Like, yes, they clearly are. That doesn't justify the invasion in the first place.
Oh, no, I'm not trying to justify it. Like the
I think you're trying
invasion.
to provide
Okay,
logic.
you're saying that's how they operate.
Yeah, I'm just saying because we tend to look at things from one perspective. That just seems to be Russia's perspective, and obviously the taking away of human lives is never something that I'm for. I think war is awful, and I don't think Russia is justifying in doing this. They should have tried more for negotiations and tried to work things out with NATO. But from Putin's perspective, this is like all he's doing is getting his land back. That's what Putin thinks he's doing.
And the people
you're right.
in the Donbass region, East Ukraine, they are ethnically and linguistically speaking Russian. They feel
That's true.
a part of the Russian state. They voted to join Russia. So it's clear that they feel no place in Ukraine, and that does not justify Putin's invasion whatsoever. But at the same time, it's important to acknowledge that Zelensky and his administration have violated the rights of ethnic Russians in East Ukraine. They've been treated very poorly. But Coleman, do you think that going forward, perhaps there is the possibility that cooler heads may prevail, that we can get to a result of peace?
Yeah, well, circles back to the question you asked earlier, which I'll address first. So if I were Zelensky, I would, play along, be nice to our, and then say, hey, Americans, I'm willing to work with you. You can we can sign that agreement. We're supposed to sign, I don't know, this week, and then will cooler heads prevail? I hope so, because we have, strong executive leadership in the White House. So that I am hopeful for that. But I did see, I think it was either the UK, Britain, what have you. I needed to clarify this, but they announced more involvement in this war. I think today, which is not good. But so we kind of need the EU to calm down here too.
I actually think that it is a good thing. I would say good thing, but I think it was one of Trump's moves because it was originally really just us that was backing Ukraine. But now you see Trudeau and all these people from the European Union, and now they're like, okay, we're gonna help back Ukraine. So now they're it seems like they were just lecturing us on, we need to help Ukraine, and you guys should go ahead and give them all the money to do things. But now that Trump is sort of pulling out and be like, okay, we're not just gonna give money to Ukraine for nothing in return. Then all of a sudden, you just saw Trudeau earlier, he just tweeted, we're gonna go work with the European, people from countries in the European Union in order to help Ukraine. So it seems like these people are now having to put their money where their mouth was.
That is better than the U.S. giving Ukraine resources, but I would hope that instead of those countries giving Ukraine money in the first place, that they use their leverage to pursue peace rather than forward the war cause, because Zelensky is just throwing an entire generation into the depths of the Donbass for no reason whatsoever. It's very sad to see when much of this could have been prevented 3 years ago.
And I think they will, because before these people didn't really have much stake in the game, but now that they're going to have more stake in the game, because now it's them that's going to be giving more of their money to Ukraine. Now maybe they're going to push for peace so that they will stop losing money.
And final note on this is that it is very concerning that there had been pushes for Ukraine to join NATO. That would be a disaster, because that would bring us into World War III, confrontation with Russia. We do not need to go to war with Russia. There's no need for that. So it's clear that Zelensky just continues to try to escalate the situation, make everything worse, drag everyone into his war so that they can die at the hands of the Russians, and instead we can have peace, we can have prosperity. But Zelensky is a madman, and he wants the war to continue at any cost.
And he is losing the war. He cannot win a war against Russia. Russia has also, I'm not saying they're going to go nuclear, but they do have that option.
Power,
They do, and that as well. And Russia is just a much much more powerful than Ukraine. As Trump was telling Zelensky, you don't have the cards. Which, I mean, when Zelensky comes to the office, and I'm not going to say Trump and Vance were bullies, but they were kind of bullying Zelensky. But it is the Oval Office of the United States, the president of the United States. So he's coming to us. So he should be more cordial when coming to us. Even if we're not as cordial, it's like he relies on us. Without us, the war would have ended in, some would say, 3 days. And that Zelensky said it himself. The war would have ended in 3 days if we didn't have the backing of the United States of America.
Yep.
So he is relying on us, and he does have to treat us more cordially and respectfully, even if Trump and Vance aren't the most cordial and respectful to him.
Right. No respect for the United States from Zelensky. And that being said, thanks everyone so much for watching. We really appreciate it. We upload 3 times a week. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And feel free to reach out to us at youthbombs@elatrarepublicans.com. Thanks so much, everyone.